So in this video, we're going to talk about how to solve square root equations and inequalities using a calculator. So remember, we talked about how to do these problems by hand, but today we're going to do them on a calculator. So you can solve square root equations using your calculator by treating each side of the equation as an independent function. Then what we're going to do is we're going to graph these functions and we're going to look for the intersection point. In Desmos, remember, this means that you just click on the point. In the TI calculator, what you're going to do is you're going to click second and then trace to choose the calculate menu, and then choose option 5, which is intersect. Then you're going to click enter 3 times and it'll give you the value of the intersection. So let's try finding the solutions of the square root of 3x plus 1 equals 3/5 x plus 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to enter both sides of this equation as two separate functions into our calculator. So if we start off with Desmos, what we're going to do is we're going to enter the left side, which is the square root of 3x plus 1. So you click square root and then 3x plus 1. And then what we're going to do is go to the second row and we're going to enter the 3/5 x plus 1 as a separate function. So now you can see I have a square root function and a line graphed on my grid. So here what it's telling me is to find where these two functions are equal to each other. So what I need to do is I need to find the 2 points where these intersect. You can see these intersect at 2 points. So if I click on those points, it's going to give me the coordinates. So the x coordinate is going to tell me the solution. So I'm going to say this has two solutions at x equals 0 and x equals 5. I'm also going to show you how to do this on the calculator, just in case you're using the calculator instead of Desmos. You're going to click on y equals, and we're going to do second and then the squared button to get the square root, and then you do 3x plus 1, and then hit enter, and then in the next line we're going to do our 3/5 x plus 1. Okay, so then when we click second and then calculate, you can see option 5 tells us intersect. Hit enter, and then it's creating the graph. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hit enter 3 times, and it gives us that first intersection point, which is at x equals 0, y equals 1. Okay, so if we want to find the value of that second intersection point, so we're going to go back to intersect again, and then we're going to arrow over to where we're closer to the other intersection. Okay, so we want to tell it to find the intersection over here. So we hit enter, and then we hit enter again, and then enter, and it tells us we have the second intersection at x equals 5, y equals 4. So since we're talking about square root functions, we want to check these solutions to make sure that they're not extraneous. So to do that, I'm going to plug them back into the original problem. So that gives me 3 times 0 plus 1 equals 3/5 times 0 plus 1. So that tells me that the square root of 0 plus 1 equals 3/5 times 0, which is just 0 plus 1. So that tells me that the square root of 1 is 1, which is in fact true. So now if I plug in x equals 5, that tells me that I have 3 times 5 plus 1 equals 3/5 times 5 plus 1. So that tells me that the square root of 3 times 5 is 15, so 15 plus 1 equals 3/5 times 5, so that's 3 plus 1. So that tells me that the square root of 16 equals 4, which is 4 equals 4, which is also true. So that means that both of these values are solutions to our equation. So now you can go ahead and pause the video and try this example on your own. So we have the square root of x plus 9 equals x minus 3. So I'm going to enter this as two separate functions into the graphing calculator. So I'm going to show you in Desmos. So we have the square root of x plus 9 and then we have x minus 3. So when we zoom out, notice that these two functions intersect only at one point, and that point has an x value of x equals 7. So that means that x equals 7 is the solution to this equation. If you plug it in, you will find that it is in fact a true solution, right? If we plug it in, we get the square root of 7 plus 9 equals 7 minus 3, which tells me that the square root of 16 equals 4, which is in fact true. So you can also solve square root inequalities using your calculator using a similar process. What we're going to do is we're going to enter each side of the inequality as a function into the graphing calculator or Desmos, look for the intersections, and then look for the interval where the graphs are less than or greater than each other according to the inequality sign that's in the original problem. So if we try solving this problem for x, we have the square root of x plus 7 is greater than or equal to x plus 1. So we're going to do the same strategy we did before. Okay, we're going to enter each side of this into our calculator. So we have the square root of x plus 7, and then we have x plus 1. Okay, so what x values are we looking for? Remember, when we have an inequality, we have a whole range of values. Well, this is telling me that the square root function is greater than x plus 1. So we're going to look at the part of this graph where the square root function is above the linear function. Okay, so you can see that this starts off right here, right? So it starts off at a value x equals -7. So this is going to go from -7, and that is included. So we have -7 less than or equal to x. And then the point where it stops being above the linear function is here, right? At x equals 2. So we would say x is less than or equal to 2. Because you see, for the values in this interval, okay, so from -7 to x equals 2, you see the square root function is above the linear function, okay, the greater than or equal to. Any point beyond x equals 2, notice that the linear function moves above the square root function, okay? So that's why only this part of the graph, the x values from -7 to 2, is where our inequality is true. So now you can go ahead and pause the video and try this example on your own. So when we graph this as two separate functions, notice that once again, the square root function in blue is above the linear function in green, only for the x values going from -25 to 11. So that's how we get the solution. -25 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 11. So you can solve square root equations and inequalities using your calculator by entering each side of the equation or inequality as a separate function into the calculator. Then you're going to look for the intersection points to determine the solutions. Remember to always go back and check to see if you have any extraneous solutions.